All right. Well, hello, Colorado. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandon Ward here with Joe Neville. Today, we're going to discuss some current events related to the COVID crisis, the local political scene, and other news and things going on here in Colorado. Joe, how are you today?
Doing outstanding, except for the fact that we're not free and we're living in the land of socialism. But you know what? We're seeing a lot of great people out on the streets right now, and a lot of activists that are starting to pop up that we haven't seen in a long time, probably since the 2013 recalls here in Colorado. So on that front, it is exciting because it gives me hope that hopefully we can break free from the strangleholds of government on our lives right now.
Oh, this is definitely a moment when people are waking up to what's going on around them and realizing that the government's not there to protect them, that our governor doesn't care about you. They care only about their political career and getting you to do what they say.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't believe it last week when we were out there and I ran into you out there on the streets, which was awesome. And you see all these people and some were wearing masks, some weren't. You know, I'm one that I'm not going to wear a mask. I don't care. The government can't make me. But at the same time, you know, it was good just to see everybody out there. And more than the governor, I mean, look at Polis right now, who just keeps forcing more and more of his radical agenda down our throats. If you look at the actual cities and counties and the local areas and what they're doing to jobs and businesses, it's just blows my mind. It's amazing how fast this stuff has all actually just happened.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I think it's one of those moments almost where you remember where you were when all of a sudden it was boom, boom, boom. NBA shut down. The NHL shut down. That was the thing I was most upset about.
Yeah, me too. Like, where's my hockey team? The Avs actually have this team that's doing well, and then boom, gone.
Right. This was the year we were going to win it all. And
yeah.
Overnight, everything changed, really. I mean, that's the narrative the media is pushing out there, and people are going along with it. That's the craziest part, is how people are so scared. They're so scared they're willing to sacrifice their liberty, their freedom, and just do what they're told. It's unbelievable.
They're giving up their churches. They're giving up their churches. They're giving up their – I mean, I know for me, I'm still involved in my church and we're online, but it isn't the same. People have literally allowed their churches to be taken over by the government. And that to me is the scariest of all of this, is that even on a spiritual level, we're letting people take over.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, our First Amendment rights, I mean, these are our natural God-given rights enshrined in the First Amendment. And we have the right to assemble, which we saw the threats coming against the people who were attending the protests. I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but I could barely stomach it. Looking at the comments on YouTube during the live streams the news was doing on those big protests a couple Sundays ago, seeing the Facebook live comments, I mean, people are vicious. People are wishing harm and wishing ill will against people who are exercising their fundamental rights to address their grievances to their representative government, to assemble, to go to church, to, you know, do what they're allowed. It's crazy. I hate hearing this word allowed. I keep hearing that over and over, and that's what drives me insane. What are we allowed to do? Well, when we're allowed to do this, we can do it. When we're allowed. That's not the role of government. The government isn't there to tell us what we can and can't do. It has a very simple function. It's supposed to represent the interests of the people. And here we are. I was checking the numbers today. We have 358,000 people in Colorado over the last 5 weeks who filed unemployment. So 360,000, nearly 360,000 people out of jobs, and our governor's still collecting a paycheck. How many politicians, all these bureaucrats are still collecting paychecks, the mayors, the county commissioners, these health department people, the ones who are forcing us to stay at home, to sacrifice our businesses, to, you know, destroy our lives and disrupt our lives. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the factor. I mean, the governor finally had to make some cuts just yesterday night, it looks like, but those cuts fail in comparison to what he's keeping. I mean, for example, I can tell you right off the top of my head that I noticed is he actually cut the Safe to Tell hotline from public schools. Now, I'm not one about snitching. In fact, the biggest problem I'm having with this entire thing is the snitching process. But I can tell you that giving people an opportunity to possibly help prevent school shootings and stuff like that, it seems like that would be on the governor's agenda. Yet now he's turning around and he's cutting that, but he still has an airplane. He still has an airplane. He still has a paycheck coming in. He's still pushing all-day kindergarten for his agenda, but he cuts the Safe to Tell line. It just shows where his priorities are right now. The fact that he'd be willing to he's just not seeing the people, and maybe that's just his boulder-eyed attitude that he's, surrounded by. And then you start looking at all these health department officials. They're making upwards of anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year to shut down businesses. And then you find out they don't even, like the one in Jefferson County, he doesn't even live in Jefferson County. He lives in Boulder with Jared Polis. Same place, same area Jared Polis lives in.
Yeah, that was amazing when I heard that. That Dr. Mark B. Johnson was his name. He's the guy that's signing his name on these threatening letters to businesses across Jefferson County, threatening them with criminal charges, a year in jail, thousands of dollars in fines for staying open, for providing goods and services to your community, for working.
Yeah, after he took prisoners and he let prisoners go free. So he took they emptied people out of the prisons because they were worried about COVID. And now they're talking about putting these business owners, people trying to make a living to feed their families, and they're talking about putting them in prison.
Oh, unbelievable. It's what is happening to our state. Colorado is the place for freedom. That's why so many, half the people, we're lucky enough we were born here in the greatest places in the country and in the world. But so many people, half the people here are not from Colorado. And why did they come here? They came here to be free. They came here because our way of life is a way that they can take risks, that they can live their life to their fullest potential without being told what to do, escaping all of that East Coast socialism and California socialism, coming here to be free, one of the last places. And it's just sad to see what's happening. So it's crazy. It really, really is.
Yeah, no doubt, man. There's a lot of topics that you brought up. Me and you were talking before the show. I don't know which. I guess we just run. This is our first show, obviously. So let's run through those things, man. What do you got?
For sure. Well, I like the idea of talking about the budget cuts that you already brought up. I saw some figures today. It was at $200 million, $225, $230 million that they're going to have to cut out of the budget. Hey, as a small government guy, hey, that's the good news out of all of this. Hey, less tax revenue, less ability for the government to infringe on our lives. We just need to cut down those regulatory agencies and all those enforcement agencies that are coming out there and attacking all these small businesses.
Absolutely.
So, less money for the government to spend is a good thing. It's just unfortunate that it's less tax money coming because it's a less productive economy. That's the most frustrating part.
How many members of the governor's staff you think were cut?
Oh, yeah, good question.
Yeah, I doubt it. I can tell you, I know that no staff has been cut from the legislative side that I know of. I can't imagine the staff, as far as I know, none of them. But the fact of the matter is you have hair salons out of business right now. You have restaurants. And I can tell you, I don't know about you, but one of my first jobs was in a restaurant. And I was going through, as growing up, restaurants were a way I was making a living as I was getting through school, as I was doing other things. There's a lot of people that work in those restaurants that rely on that income in their early stages of life. And those jobs are gone right now. And it's going to be interesting to see which ones actually recover or come back, because I don't know how many will. But that's a big one. And the hair salons. I had a black market haircut, but I know a lot of people who haven't. So it's just crazy how many of these businesses are actually going to be shut down forever.
Oh, yeah. We're hearing stories every day now of these iconic businesses down in Denver and other parts of the state that aren't going to be able to come back. A lot of businesses run just on the margins, especially in the food service industry. They're living basically month to month just to barely make ends meet. For disruption like this, that can mean the end of it for somebody who's worked their entire life to create their business of their dreams, and now they're gone. And it's not. And let's be clear, it's not because of the COVID that they're closing the businesses down. It's the government's response. It is the government's quote unquote cure that is worse than the disease that is putting these people out of business.
Yeah, you can see that through the hypocrisy of what's going on. You can go to a Costco right now or a Sam's Club, and God, I'm thankful for that. Don't get me wrong. We can go to those without government getting in our way or trying to arrest us or throw us in prison. We can at least get groceries. It's those little trinkets that they hand you to basically say, see, things are still okay. But then you turn around and you look at the gym industry, the health and fitness industry, and here's they're saying you need exercise. They're saying you need all these things to stay healthy during this time, but you can't even go into the gym. And then I've talked to several people in the gym industry that have said, look, we got ways to even social distance with inside of the gym, and they still won't let them open. Same thing with movie theaters. You got movie theaters that are shut right now. it seems like it would be legit. It'd be logical that a movie theater could say, "Hey, we're only going to let so many people into our theater," but yet they're shut down, and Costco and Sam's Club and Walmart are open. Now, I'm glad everything should be open, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter, it shows the hypocrisy that's going on with picking and choosing who gets to stay open, who doesn't, and that's the scariest thing of all. I mean, when you got Elon Musk coming out and even he's saying, that this is over the top fascism, a guy who lives off of government grants, right? And he's saying this is just out of control. That's saying something.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty funny. That's good. Yeah, it's crazy, this essential versus non-essential. Who decides? I mean, it reminds me of all those stories you heard about the Soviet Union.
Right.
If the commissar liked you, if the Soviet, bureaucrat decided that your business was worth staying open, you could get special permission. And that's where we're at right now. We're completely becoming this, I have to have a special paper, a special permission slip from the government that I can sell, shoes to somebody or something like that. I mean, it's completely and utterly ridiculous. And it is kind of interesting, you brought up the hypocrisy, how Denver, when they first announced this, said, hey, we're going to shut down dispensaries, marijuana dispensaries, we're going to shut down liquor stores. And I can tell you, my friend who works at a liquor store, he said that was the busiest day they've ever had. Oh, yeah. And the governor or the mayor of Denver quickly retracted and said, hey, well, let's go ahead and keep them open because, hey, they're essential. Well, on a whim, they decided that they're essential and other businesses are not. I mean, and I can see why, because without the liquor stores, without the dispensaries, Denver would probably be in riots right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's become very political, and of course they want to accuse a lot of the folks on the conservative side for making it political. But the fact of the matter is, look at this. I mean, they're picking and choosing what is safe and what is not. The very beginning of this thing, a mask was not okay, and then it's like all of a sudden, no, everybody must wear a mask. And then now we're finding out from the Surgeon General, masks are kind of crazy to be wearing right now because it forces people to put their hands all over their face. But then you look at the actual numbers, and I couldn't tell you exactly. I don't have it in front of me, but how many people are actually hospitalized today? But I can tell you that what does it say here? That we have, I mean, it was anywhere from 800 to 900 hospitalizations at a time is what it's been on average. So 800 people are in the hospital, 900 people in the hospital at one time. And then you look at how many people are out of work. And then you find out that there's the numbers are being skewed by about these deaths that, there's these coroners that are these people from funeral homes that just came out and said, look, a lot of these aren't COVID deaths. They're not even dying of COVID. They're just being labeled as dying as COVID so that there's money that can be flowed in the direction of those hospitals. And that's all political.
Yeah.
That's political. That's socialism from the, being forced on us from the left.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen these big government agencies like the CDC and even the American Medical Association come out and basically encourage doctors to report it as a COVID death, regardless if it's been confirmed through a test or not. I mean, if that's not malpractice, if that's not dishonest, then what is? And I did pull up some statistics, not about how people are hospitalized or how many people are hospitalized, but who's dying. And this is something I don't think we see so often in the media. Because if you did, you'd realize, hey, why are we locking everybody down when the vast majority of people who are dying are older and have, comorbidities, as they say. So I looked it up this morning. According to the Colorado Department of Public Health, they said 96% of the deaths are 50 plus. So 96% of people dying that are being attributed to the COVID is 50 plus. 91.5% are 60 plus. 78% are 70 plus. 54% are 80 plus. So you're talking, let's just start the other way. 54% of the people they're saying are dying from this are 80 plus years old. Well, as we've seen, there's the outbreaks in the nursing homes, in these care places. I mean, that's where the real problem is occurring. And then 70 plus, 78%, well, most of those people aren't working anyway. So to close all these businesses, most of those people are able to isolate a lot easier than the younger people. Right. So to say, when only 4% of the people who are dying are under 50, but everybody under 50 has to go along with all these edicts, it's just the whole way government works. They create this one size fits all solution without looking at the nuances. We see our governor come out and say every county, regardless if you're rural or urban, has to follow this one set of circumstances. Every city, every community. Well, the truth is every community is different. Every county is different. There's different challenges everywhere. And just the idea that the government can come in and tell us to shut down, to lock down. I mean, I saw something the other day. It said, you know, a quarantine is when you put sick people
Right.
confined to keep them safe, right? That's what you do. But if to keep healthy people confined, that's not quarantine. That's prison.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I'm looking at the same as some of the other numbers over here from the I think it's the same place you were, but the COVID-19.colorado.gov website, and I'm in the hospital section. It's actually lower than I was saying. It's 700 as of the 20 as of, let's see here, as last updated April 30th. So yesterday at 4:05 p.m. there were 756 people in the hospital currently right now. So you only have 756 people currently in the hospital right now. The whole point of this was this isolation, right? Self-isolation, or the ban, the moving around ban, everything else, was so that we could prevent from the overwhelming of hospitals.
Right. Right.
Well, I think we've done that. It's 756 people in the hospital right now. I know we have. I mean, we bailed the hospitals out and added how many dang beds over the last 2 years. We know we got way more than 756 beds out there to fill right now. Yet, we're killing an economy. We're putting moms and dads out of work. Look, we're facing poverty here soon. There's going to be huge. They're already talking about huge numbers of poverty. Jobless rates are going to be astronomical. And so you look at these numbers, and it just doesn't make sense.
No.
So the governor needs to open this place up. He needs to, and the people need to stand up and actually take this place back. And in November, especially, they need to at least be flipping, the legislature over if they can do that. But there's going to be a lot of people that need to be held accountable for this.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you see how high the stakes are. I mean, to have somebody like this in office, to have a compliant state legislature controlled by the Democrats who are coming in and enforcing their edicts on the entire society. I mean, it's scary stuff, really. I mean, it's the worst parts of central planning. We know where this leads, folks. It leads to the bread lines. It leads to mass unemployment. It leads to homeless camps. I mean, they got to focus more, building more homeless camps. And the whole idea that the governor thinks he can stop the economy and then restart it, that's not how it works. In economics, we talk a lot about the costs, the unseen versus the seen costs. Well, the seen costs are the most obvious ones, right? That's the 360,000 people out of work right now that are filing for unemployment. Those are all the businesses we see closed as we drive down the street. The unseen costs are all the people on the other side, on the supply side, on the manufacturing side, on the warehouse side, who are not going to have jobs because they're selling their products to, those businesses are closing down. As we're seeing now, all these ranchers up in Walt County and in the rural parts of the state not having a market to sell their food because they're not selling to the restaurants. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. People really need to wake up to what's going on and realize that we can turn this around. I mean, the benefit to our society we live in and what has made the United States and America such a great place is we still have a semblance of representative government. We still have the ability to actually have a say, and that's why people were out at these protests. That's why people are writing and calling their representatives in the governor's office. That's why these thousands of petitions are being turned in. I saw on the news recently. I mean, people are making their voices heard, and let's just keep hoping that they're going to do this come November and make their voices heard and say enough is enough. You work for us. Government works for us. We don't do what you tell us to do. You do what we tell you to do.
You're allowed to do whatever you want. It's not the government's choice to tell you what you're allowed to do or not do, as you said earlier. I'm looking at some of these other things. I mean, there's an article on Colorado Citizen Press right now that I'm looking at. It says, talks about police taking control of the housing market and banning evictions.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it's now obviously, okay, I'm going to be the big bad Republican here that wants to evict people on the streets, right? Which is total crap. That's not the case. That's not what we want. But the fact of the matter is, people forget that the people that own those apartments, that own those houses, they're making a living too. They got to feed their family too. So if they can put somebody in there that's going to pay the bills so that then they therefore can feed their family, that's how it's supposed to work. Once the government comes in and says, you're not allowed to do this, they've just taken control of your property, folks. They're now saying that they own your property. That's tyranny. That's flat out tyranny, and they shouldn't be allowed, but that's what's going on right now. And I think what makes it it's kind of a double-edged sword. What makes it even scarier is that, there's people giving into this. They're giving into this. And I've talked to a couple people that are in the actual home building industry and the real estate industry, and they have apartment complexes and hotels and things like that. And they are giving breaks to people on their own free will. And kudos to those business owners. That's awesome. That's good for them to do that. That's kind. That's very kind. But they shouldn't be forced to do that by the government. And that's what's happening right now. And for Polis to even think that he can do that just shows if he's willing to do this, how far is he willing to go?
Oh, how telling is it too? Here on May Day, the 1st of May, right? This international socialist holiday, that Polis comes out and drops this line that you can't evict people and you can't send them out on the street. You know, as we've seen this Antifa types online talking about this rent strike and don't pay your rent. And here comes the governor basically supporting that viewpoint of, hey, don't pay your bills. Don't pay your bills. You know, don't worry about it. They can't kick you out. I mean, if you've ever read any Ayn Rand, We the Living is a perfect example of what it was like in the Soviet Union, where you had your apartment building and then all of a sudden, hey, these guys are now moving into your apartment. You got to share it with them. Well, you don't have a choice because that's what they're telling you got to do. It's either that or you live on the streets. I mean, if the government give it, the government can take it away. So people who are thinking that the government's going to provide for them, hey, don't count on it. Don't count on it without stipulations, without them coming in and trying to control your behavior. That's what it leads to.
Yeah, and it goes for all levels too. I mean, I'm not going to give a pass to the people on the federal level. A $1,200 check. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't care what party, Republican, Democrat, a huge bailout where you're trying to say, oh, well, we'll give you another, once again, here's another trinket. You know, a $1,200 check is going to cost you how many thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over our lifetime, let alone our kids and grandkids' lifetime, to pay back the total debt that it took to just give us that $1,200 or $1,400 check. And then now you're hearing people aren't even getting it. Like some people aren't getting the checks. It's not coming on time. What was that for? Well, it was a government, it was the government trying to give you a little cookie. They're giving you a piece of candy to say, shut up, take this. We're doing the right thing. Now here's your little bit of money. Shut up and just let us do what we got to do to basically control your lives. So
right, here's $1,200, sit at home, watch Netflix all day, order your DoorDash and Grubhub, and don't complain.
Yep.
Basically, maybe they're having trouble getting those checks out because the printing presses at the Federal Reserve are probably, breaking down. They're printing so much money right now. You got trillions of dollars flooding the economy. I mean, the value of the dollar is going down, guys. I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah, it's scary times for sure. I mean, and people are going to be on edge naturally right now, right? Like you see this thing that happened in Michigan yesterday. And of course the headlines are like, oh, they stormed the Capitol. Well, they didn't storm the Capitol, but they did go protest at the Capitol. And I'm sure there were some people open carrying there, but nobody stormed the Capitol. But look at the press right now. Look at the headlines. I mean, this is being a lot of this energy and negative attitude and people being scared on both sides of the argument is coming from the press. That's what the narrative is being fed to them. So it's important. I think that we need to, I think that's kind of the reason we were talking about maybe doing some of this stuff is one, it's to get it off our chest, right? But we also have an opportunity to say, hey, here's what we're really hearing. I mean, they're not storming the Capitol, but there are a bunch of patriots up there that are protesting because they want to go back to work. And that's important. But man, they keep pushing this. We just need to pray that it doesn't go too far to the point of, I mean,
right. No, exactly. I mean, we still have a representative government. We still have a way to get involved with what's going on. And I think that's why all these types of Zoom calls and new blogs popping up and websites and things like that, it's getting a new voice out there. Yeah. Because we all know the media is lying to us. We've known that for a long time. I mean, if anybody there is watching this as a Trump supporter, you've seen it for the last 4 years. They've been lying to you every single day. Right. And now people, I mean, I see it all around me. People I know, they're sitting at home watching news 24 hours a day, just being bombarded with this stuff. And there's only so much you can take before you start believing it. You start believing, hey, this is what's going on. I should be scared. I should give up my freedom. I should give up my rights. It's too scary out there until you start looking at the facts, until you actually start talking to your neighbors and realizing what's really going on. Because it's important to get these other perspectives out there because the voices from the media, it's not good. I mean, they've been lying to us and they're going to keep lying to us. And it's unbelievable how heavy-handed they're getting. I mean, I get sick to my stomach every time I see Kyle Clark on TV or read one of his tweets. And even these other news guys who are a little bit more objective coming out and saying, oh, you don't want to be accused of taking food from somebody that's on a welfare check, maybe you shouldn't go to the supermarket for that first week of the month, because that's the only time these people can go get their groceries. And it's just unbelievable how heavy-handed it is. It's revealing the authoritarian tendencies in all of these people. And that's like what you were talking about earlier with the snitch lines, with all the people snitching and calling. I don't know if you've seen this, but I know out in, I think it was St. Louis and in Florida, they're using a lot of the sunshine laws and open record acts. Some activists are going in there, and they're actually publicly posting on social media all of the comments, emails, phone calls that people have been making, snitching on their businesses, on their neighbors. I mean, it's unbelievable. I read an email that somebody had sent in down in Florida saying, "Oh, I worked for my company for 15 years. Please don't tell my boss, but we should close down." And hey, it's all public now. And every time you're communicating with the government, as we know, I've done some 4-hour requests here in Colorado. It's public record. So, that's a kind of grassroots activism that's pretty encouraging to me, is seeing all these, because wouldn't you want to know if your neighbors are the ones that are going to be snitching you out, or the people that you work with? I mean, that's important information, because we're kind of in some scary times, and you got to know who's the ones that are going to be calling in, ratting you out, for getting a haircut you're not supposed to get, or for walking your dog without a mask, or going to celebrate your faith at church.
Right.
If those people are calling in on you, people should know who they are. So, basically don't get involved.
Make them out to be the snitch. But it's even crazy it's come to that point right now. Now we got to snitch on snitches. It's this whole thing blows my mind. I mean, I grew up, my dad told me, he said, "Hey, keep to your own, mind your business, keep your head down, do your job, and just, do your best." Right. And now you're looking at it, and he never once, if I snitched on people, I'd get in trouble for snitching, because it was just something that wasn't my business. And it's this snitch culture that we live in now, where, there's a fine line. I mean, yes, you got people that are, if you're talking about lies, but come on, if people want to go worship in a church, or they want to go take a hike down on a path, at a state park or something like that, it's their choice. They're leaving the house. We have the freedom to leave. We know, we've been given the warnings, whatever those are, to go out and, we shouldn't do it. That's what it says, right? And we go, if we want to do it, it's up to us to go do it. So I'm making that decision myself. But you have a snitch calls in, and all of a sudden now you got people that are getting in trouble. I've seen business owners, and that one guy in Fort Collins owned the tobacco shop. And
right.
I mean, talk about putting your livelihood into something. Like, he probably put his last dollar into that thing, and they're shutting it down. They're just shutting it down.
Denverite, the local Denver, one of these Denver websites had a list yesterday I saw of all these businesses that have been cited by the city of Denver. And I mean, it's a pretty good list, but you see places like Queen's Auto Sales, Wigs and Beauty Supply, Smokey's Pipe and Tobacco, Sleep Nation. The one that blows my mind is Appliance Factory. Now, I've worked in appliance sales for a big portion of my career. And to tell somebody that, "Oh, you can't have a stove," I thought, what, you can't cook? What happens if your stove breaks down?
It happened to my brother. His refrigerator went out 2 weeks to get a refrigerator.
Yeah, so to tell somebody that, "Oh, you getting a refrigerator, keeping your food refrigerated is not essential." Hey, you only want us. I mean, it's absurd. It's just completely absurd.
Chiropractors. I've talked to several chiropractors that have been put down. In fact, that that's another topic. But that chiropractor that, God bless him, he sued the state of Colorado because they're just not letting these guys go to work. And I can tell you firsthand from going to a chiropractor myself, it's made my life substantially better on a daily basis. Ever since I have not been able to go, it's made it tougher. So, but how is that essential versus non-essential? I mean, to every one of these business owners or the employees getting a paycheck from the business, it is essential. Every job is essential.
Definitely. It's interesting you bring up the chiropractor. I actually I spoke to an elected representative here in Jefferson County to try and get some help on my business that was being shut down. And there was an interesting story that was related to me about chiropractors. And part of the way they were able to get chiropractors exempt from a lot of the non-essential orders is they made the argument, the chiropractic lobby came out and said, "Hey, Governor Polis, if people aren't getting the chiropractic help they need, they're going to get worse off and might end up going to the emergency room, might end up flooding the hospitals, the medical systems." But it took that much. It took an actual lobby interest group to come out and fight for the rights of this business group. I mean, it's interesting to see. I've seen that in the automotive industry as well. First off, automotive sales were banned, but they have a pretty good lobbying group here in Colorado. And they came out and worked out a deal with the governor. And
Mm.
I've seen, and I'm sure that's a common thing of what's going on right now. As we've seen through political experience, you need a special interest lobby group basically is the only thing that's going to protect your rights against the heavy hand of government. But that leaves all the small business people who can't afford to be part of one of these big organizations or afford these big lawyers. They're the ones that get pushed over. You know, the big companies who can afford the lawyers and lobbyists to go out there and make special rules and get special permission for their businesses to operate. Yeah, they can do it, but not everybody else. Not Nugs Ice Cream and Colorado Vaping Glass and all these other places. I got that listener from Car Wash USA, GameStop. I mean, all these places are being said. Easy Pawn. That was in a pawn shop. Shouldn't that be essential? People need money. I mean, as you said, the whole essential versus not essential, it's extremely arbitrary, it's extremely hypocritical, and this is not the role of government. It is not the role of government.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the hospitalizations. And like you mentioned, 50% of the people that have died of their age group, certain age groups, 700 some odd people in the population. You know, we have millions and millions of people in Colorado, and we have 700 some odd people in the hospital right now. And look, if I had a family member, God forbid, in the hospital that was sick for any reason, you know, that's, you know, that's something that we should pray for those people. But at the same time, there are a lot of other things that are going to happen if we continue this path. I've heard, you know, the statistics about suicide rate increase and mental health problems, drug addiction, alcoholism, child abuse was a big one they're talking about, with people being stuck in homes and a lot of child abuse cases, a lot of, you know, just domestic violence in general. That's all becoming the new disease from what, the new problems that are happening out of this. And that's something we got to pay attention to as well. I mean, that's, you know, the only way you fix that is opening it back up, and then people being able to monitor themselves and protecting themselves. But
Right, and it comes down to personal responsibility, like you were talking about earlier. I mean, part of the reason our country is so great is people come here because they can take risks. They can take risks and choose where they're going to put their money, what kind of business to open up, and they can take these risks they can't take back in some of these foreign countries. And they come here as immigrants, take these risks, and become wildly successful. And that's what America's about. It's about taking responsibility for yourself, making your own decisions to say, hey, is this going to make me better off? Is it going to make me worse off? Well, that's a risk I got to take. And having that ability, it can bring out the best in people and give entrepreneurs the opportunity to, you know, change the world, really. And of these shutdown orders, this government control of the economy, it prevents that. It stifles innovation. It just shuts down and slows down our economic progress. It's interesting for sure. We are basically existing within a social experiment right now, perpetrated on us by, you know, government bureaucrats, and we're seeing what's happening, and it's not pretty. So the truth will speak for itself, and I think people will realize what has happened and hopefully do something about it come November.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know how long people are going to be, and especially here, right in Colorado. I mean, how long are people going to be willing to sit cooped up inside? I'm looking outside right now. It's a beautiful day out there. You know, if unfortunately I had to take care of some business taxes, which of course the IRS still wants my money, so I'm taking care of those there. I'd have been out there with those people like I was the other weekend. But God bless them for being out there. It's a beautiful day to be outside. But how long are people going to be willing to be cooped up? I know that high school sports has been canceled. All those seniors out there, I want to give out a shout out to them. A lot of those, especially the athletes that, you know, this was their final year. And a lot of those kids looking for scholarships and whatnot to, you know, to play, it's done.
Right.
It's cut off. You know, what will come from this? Well, time will tell. As far as also the homeschooling, I can tell you that my kids are at home. We're seeing a lot of holes in the education system as well, which is for a whole other day. But my kids are done with their school by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and their grades are still doing great. So you sit there and look at it, and you're like, well, what is happening for the 8.5, 7.5, 8.5 hours a day that you have my kids? You know, maybe I am better off keep them at home, because your public school system sucks and it has a lot of problems. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we're learning from this too. I guess that's a bright light, but the truth is, I don't see people. I know for me, I'm speaking for myself, but I can tell you from everybody I've talked to, they're not going to be sitting at home much longer, cooped
Right.
up. This needs to open up. People need to go back to work.
Oh, we're seeing increasing instances of non-compliance, I'm sure.
Right.
People are just not going to go along with it, which is what needs to happen, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's on you. Everybody has the right to do what they need to do, but maybe it's time for people to open their businesses up. I mean, open your business up. But who's going to go out there and defend them? I can see where the business owner is coming from. It's a huge risk. If I open it up, I'm going to possibly face jail time and fines. But when is civil disobedience going to kick in? And when I say civil disobedience, it needs to be peaceful. And then November's here soon enough. And in November, we need to mobilize. We need to get together. Selfless plug to my group, Take Back Colorado. Go there and donate, because we gotta go back, and we gotta actually take back the legislature, or at least make some cover huge ground this November. So
Definitely. Yeah, we got a really interesting election coming up. Obviously, the presidential race is taking the air out of the room for most people, but locally we got a lot going on. If you want to talk a little bit about some of the races going on, I'd like to talk a little bit about one of my least favorite politicians. I call him adoringly John Chickenlooper.
yeah,
He's running. He seems like he's having a really rough time, actually. He's struggling in his campaign. His fundraising's not what he wants it to be. He's getting beat up from the progressive side of the Democratic Party. I just saw today a judge allowed another candidate to be placed on the primary ballot. So that's going to be a very interesting race to watch. I know the Democrats nationally are going to be pouring millions and millions of dollars into Colorado, because this is one of the biggest races one of the biggest Senate seats they think they can flip. Which is huge, obviously. So that'll be one of the biggest races probably in Colorado, is the U.S. Senate race. So, it doesn't hurt my feelings to see Chickenlooper struggling in his campaign. I don't know that he has what it takes. He's getting some of the big DNC type money, but the grassroots activists, I don't think they like him very much. I think he's kind of he was terrible as a governor, but he really tried to play both sides and ended up failing spectacularly doing that, trying to appease as many people as he can, and actually end up pleasing nobody. So it'll be interesting to see if he ends up being the nominee and what happens there, because he's got a pretty messy record that I think is going to come back to bite him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I mean, in my opinion, I think he is going to make it through the primary. I think it's not going to be as easy as he wants. He's going to take some pokes, and he's going to get punched. But when they make it through, it'll be interesting to watch the general, because you got both. You got Cory Gardner, who and John Hickman were both kind of campaign the same way, right? I mean, they're the type that they're very good about working a room. They're very good about going from place to place across the state. Neither one of them is particularly a negative campaigner. They're both known for being kind of this positive campaigner type. But then you look at the grassroots, and you look at everything that's going on right now from both sides, whether it's, the Liberty side that we're working on, or you got the Progress Now types, and on the other side, and it's high, it's at a boiling point, right? So you're going to have, how are these campaigns going to navigate that process? It's going to be really interesting to see. I do agree with you. I think that Hickenlooper's in for kind of a rude awakening this year, as far as how he's not going to be able to campaign the way he has in the past. I think it's going to be a little bit different, which is going to make him look like what he is, a hypocrite. So I'm not sorry to see him struggling either with money, but we'll go from there. I think the legislature, that's the other fight. I mean, in Colorado, it's not just, we know the legislature, Democrats control every branch of government here. The legislature, it's a tough battle for sure this year, but it is something that we can take back one of the houses, and probably get back one of the chambers, and get back some of the other seats in the House possibly here. Who knows what could happen there? People are upset enough, and we get a groundswell of activity. Anything can happen in the legislature. But what about the local races? Like, look at your city councils right now. I mean, it's easy for us to blame Polis, which is, it is his fault on almost every level. But he's getting a lot of cover from, not just Mayor Hancock, but the local, Loveland. Loveland, the city of Loveland, which is a pretty red Republican city, has a snitch line, and apparently they're going along with the Larimer County mask guidelines. So you have this city that should be like defending freedom and liberty, going along with the governor and his socialist policies. So those races are just as important as every other race, your city council races, because they're the ones controlling your businesses and everything else right now. If they
Right.
open like Weld County, if they open up like Weld County, what are we going to do? I mean, if more cities did that, the governor would have to be in a hard place. He'd have to make a decision. So
Right. I mean, as you say, all politics are local. I mean, that's the big thing. When my business was threatened by the county, I mean, with all the state, by violating the non-essential rules or whatever, it
right,
wasn't the state police that showed up. It wasn't the state trooper or the state health department. It was our local county health department showed up. So it's those local government bureaucrats, it's those local officials are the ones who are the most directly related to your day-to-day life. So those city council races, the county races, that's really where the real fight is. And, Joe, I'm thinking about moving up to Weld County. I've been here in Jefferson County my whole life, born and raised here, but seeing how there are people who are standing up for their rights up there and
yeah,
not giving into the fear and not giving into the heavy hand of government, I mean, it's pretty encouraging. I mean, it seems like that might be the place to go because what's going on here in Jeffco, it's not pretty.
yeah. No, Northern Colorado is a great place. So I mean, a lot of good red meat conservatives up here. We like our guns and freedoms. So
Hey, real quick on the guns. I thought it was pretty interesting. A lot of people don't know this, but there was some news recently about background checks. I mean, I work with a owner, and he says it's been taking a week, maybe 2 weeks by the time you purchase your firearm to get your background check back from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI. Now, a lot of people don't know there's federal law. CBI has only 3 business days to approve or deny a gun sale. So if your gun seller, if your FFL gun seller store knows you, they know you're not some crazy loon, they can, under their approval, they can give you the firearm pending the results of your background check.
right.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, the big thing is the bog down that's happening, because of this whole mess that they're claiming this bog down. But the truth is, having seen the background check system, they could get it done if they wanted to. But it's just one more way that they're saying, no, we can't give it to you immediately, or we can't do the background check now. They're delaying it. And I've heard everything from 3 days to 10 days. I've heard people go even longer than that, depending on where they're at. But that itself is an infringement on your rights. I mean, we can go into the necessity of background checks or not. Anyway, I don't see the need for a background check for me to have to have my Second Amendment, privileges. The government doesn't give me that privilege. It's a right that I have. But that being said, if you have those background checks, are supposed to be immediate. I mean, they're supposed to be timely and quick and give people what they need. And now whether it's someone trying to get their CCW license, their concealed carry license, or whether they're trying to buy a firearm, they're being held back right now. And that's
Right.
That's unconstitutional. I mean,
Right. It's a perfect example of how these government regulations, these quote unquote safety regulations, are really doing one thing, and it's depriving us of our God-given rights. Right. We have the right to self-defense. The Constitution doesn't guarantee that right. Everybody's guaranteed that right with birth. You have the right to defend. If you don't have the right to defend your life, what right do you have, people?
Right.
So the government's supposed to protect those rights and defend those rights. And we're seeing how now all of a sudden a crisis comes up and they're infringing upon those rights and violating them and not allowing us to have the ability to defend ourselves, which everybody has that right.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing to me is how many people have just been willing to, week one, okay, you watch it happen. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Then week 2 came, and all of a sudden everything got extended. And I got the text message alert that everybody else got that said we're just shutting everything down. And out of nowhere, churches were closed, restaurants were closed, everything was shut. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking around and the economy is imploding. And more than that, our constitutional rights are just being trampled. They're being ripped apart, all in the name of public safety. Well, what is being safe if you're not free? I mean, that's the question we got to ask ourselves.
Yeah, people, you hear how many stories you hear about being in a prison and getting stabbed or harmed in some way. Hey, folks, you're not safe in a prison, so turning all of society into a prison is not going to make you any safer.
No.
It doesn't work.
No.
We can always go back to that Ben Franklin quote about those who give up, liberty to gain temporary safety deserve neither. Give up essential liberty for temporary safety. And that's the truth. I mean, we've known that for hundreds of years, and that's kind of the foundation of our country and the foundation of our natural rights, is that we're free, and that's just it, though. That's the real quandary, is the government's going to get away with doing what they can as long as they don't get as much pushback. And that pushback needs to come back in the elections. It needs to come back through petitioning the government through these assemblies, these protests, these petitions, these letters. You know, people reach out. People, if you're listening to this, reach out to your local elected officials. Let them know that you're not happy with what they're doing, and let's let them know they work for us and they need to reverse course and back down.
Now's the time not to sit back and wait. You got to double down. We got to use all the tools that we have. Make those phone calls. Call your legislators. You know, right now it's amazing to me watching how many of the legislators are not in work right now, right? Because Polis has sent them home. They're getting a lot of cover right now, and they're not popping their heads up. There's very few. Obviously I'm biased, but my brother Patrick Neville has stepped up. He has said stuff to the governor. He has fought back. But there's been a few other ones out there. Dave Williams, for example, and Lori Sane. I can go on. Steve Humphrey. You can go on for, you know, a lot of the legislators here in Colorado. But there are a lot of other ones. You guys aren't talking very much. You're not being very bold. You need to call these things out because your constituents are out of work. They have no money right now. They're running out of money. A lot of them are on their last paycheck. And they're leaning on you as their representative, their state senator, to actually do something to fight back. You know, and if you don't do it, they're gonna do it. And that's what's scary. Because they elected you to do it the right way. But if you don't do it, it's natural instinct for humans to actually go out and fight for what they've lost. And that's a scary thing right now. And so I'm just, call everybody. I don't care if they're Republicans, the Democrats. Obviously, I'm biased towards Republicans, but they need to be called too. You need to call them up and say, hey, get to work. You know, let's fight back. Let's get this thing open back up. We're supposed to hit the legislature here. Is supposed to open back up for budgetary reasons in a couple weeks. Let them know that you want to not just open the legislature open, you want the state open. But you need to make those calls. You need to call them, email them, contact them. They do pay attention to that stuff because politicians count the numbers. They're constantly looking at their constituents and who's contacting them because they know they need to be elected in the upcoming election. So definitely agree with you there. Contact and get involved at all levels.
Definitely. And if you see people out there who are the leaders who are fighting back and pushing back, call them and thank them.
Yeah, definitely.
Show them your support, donate to their campaigns and help them out. And then the ones who don't do it, remember those guys for election time coming up. So
come November, man, it's coming.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Well, anything else you want to talk about, Joe?
I think we're good this week. This is, I think, a first good kickoff. We'd love to hear. We're going to have, this will be obviously posted up sometime today on whatever medium we find to put it on. But as we post it up, we want to hear from the people. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know what you think about this, what you would like to hear, because we need the content from you. So, give us your feedback. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know where you're hurting. If you're a business owner or a worker and you're out of work right now, we want to hear your story. We want to hear your story. And we want to be able to get that out there. And so we have some ways to do that. So please give us your stories if you want to private message us when we put this up on Facebook or through the email that we're going to have on this video. Definitely let us know and we'll get back to you and we'll give you a plug and help promote it and see what we can do from our end as well.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, awesome, Joe. That was a lot of fun. Had a blast. I was able to get a lot of things out there. It's great to be able to share these ideas and present a different opinion than what most people are seeing on the news every day. So,
absolutely, man. Double down.
Let's do it again.